7. Let's return to the sexual assault allegations at Labour's summer camp for young party members in Waihee. The website Newsroom reporting that a 20-year-old man harassed 4 16-year-olds, 2 boys and 2 girls, at a boozy party on the camp's second night. The Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, is in the Wellington studio with me. Good morning.
Good morning.
Do you support Andrew Curtin's decision not to tell you?
Oh, look, I have no problem with that. Telling me is more about political risk and public preparation for questions. The more important issue here was what was being done on behalf of victims.
So did he handle it well?
I think even he acknowledges, I spoke to him last night, I think even he acknowledges there was a delay in services and support being offered to those involved. So the morning after, the person, the alleged offender in this case, was ejected from the camp. The question was asked of those involved what more they'd like done, if they'd like to take it further. But there was some follow-up that later took too long and the support wasn't offered early enough. And both of us, he acknowledges that, absolutely.
OK, we'll talk about that more in a moment, but it would appear this morning that a senior cabinet minister knew, that was told by Andrew Curtin. So is that reasonable? Is that reasonable that a senior cabinet minister got to know about this and still you weren't informed?
Oh, again, the more important thing for me, I don't think this is the big question here. Look, as soon as I'm informed...
But it started to leak out. It got to the cabinet, but no one thought to tell the Prime Minister?
Again, if I was told, my immediate reaction would be to check in with the party around what we'd done for those who were involved. That's the first thing I would have done, and that's what I did yesterday.
And it doesn't seem that this has been all that well handled. It does seem at least to have been a 3-week lag between. Let me just tell you between this happening and between any support and help and counselling being offered to these 4 people.
And that was wrong. That was wrong, absolutely, and that's what we acknowledge. But let me give you the reason why. Because the party president did know. Andrew Curtin made sure that he was aware, the senior vice president and the general secretary. So, of course, this was a party function, and so the senior members of the party knew. The advice they had from those who specialise in this area, and we are not experts, was to be mindful of the wider circle who was aware in order to make sure that they were protecting victims and acting in the best interest of victims. So that was the rationale. Look, again, more important for me was what we did for them, and there were clear failures there.
Yeah, was it also then from these people that clearly there was some sort of dialogue going on with these experts in the field, that there should be a 3-week gap between what is happening,
of course not,
and support being offered? So that doesn't stack up then, does it? That if Andrew Curtin and various other people in the Labour Party are all over this and are handling this
too late
and are talking to people within the sector who know how to deal with this kind of stuff, how is that ball dropped if your concern has been so greatly to be on the children involved?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to share the timeline as I'm familiar with it. So the person was ejected immediately the day after. The request was made over what more action was to be taken, and at that point it seems that questions of course were raised around alcohol and the environment, but at that point it wasn't, there weren't further requests made. After the camp, I understand that the party was made aware of the issue, asked that those who were involved be checked in with again, and further requests over what needs they might have were asked. The follow-up from that took too long, and it wasn't until we then heard back from one that we followed up with support and advice. And again, as I say, that wasn't right. We should have brought in the professionals straight away. Everyone acknowledges that now.
On the question of alcohol, did you have explicit written consent from the parents of all the children that were going to be at this summer camp to be able to offer them alcohol?
Regardless, I don't think anyone of that age should be offered alcohol, and it wasn't provided, but it was bought. My understanding,
but it was pretty freely available, clearly.
Yeah, clearly. And look, my understanding is there were consent forms, but again, I don't know that it had anything to do with alcohol. I believe it was more around their attendance. And again, that implies somehow that responsibility doesn't sit with us. It does. These are young people, and the environment they were in just wasn't appropriate. That is no excuse, though, of course, for the behaviour of what happened there, but
just to talk a little
it
bit
is another factor.
Let's just talk a little bit about this particular 20-year-old. Who is the 20-year-old? Is he a Labour Party staffer?
No.
Is he a Labour Party member?
No. No.
Why was he at the summer camp?
Good question. Very good question.
So you don't know why this person was at the summer camp because he was not a member of the Labour Party?
I believe he was associated with someone who was, but again, I don't know much beyond that.
That sounds pretty loose, that you can... My assumption would be that if you were at a Young Labour camp, you would be a member of Young Labour.
It was organised by Young Labour. Certainly in the past, they're not restricted only to Young Labour members. Members and supporters attend, and it's never been a strict requirement that you have to be a member. But clearly what's happened here, and again, no excuse for what's happened, but clearly we needed to make sure it was a much safer environment than it was.
Has he been offered any help, counselling, support?
That I cannot answer. I don't know the full identity of the person, but that is something that I will ask a question around. I know that has been discussed.
Considering these were children involved, 4 of them, 16-year-olds, should the parents have been told? Yeah,
and you know, I have to think about this from a personal perspective. If it were me and I were the parent, I would want to know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this was a question, granted, a question that was asked too late, but a question that our General Secretary asked, I believe, or sought advice about. Because if you have the person involved wanting to not widen the circle, to what degree do you act against their desire? But again, keeping in mind they were young people, so that's hugely difficult. If
Did
it were
they
me,
explicitly
I would
say,
want to know.
I don't want my parents to know? All 4 of them.
Again, I would be acting on what I understand to be secondhand. That's a better question for Andrew Kuhn. My understanding, he was acting at the will of those involved.
Irrespective, considering what has happened, it was obviously taken seriously enough for this 20-year-old to be ejected from the camp.
Yes.
Why were the police not brought in?
Yeah, again, this is where same with the parent issue. They were young people, and so even though a view from their part was voiced around what they wanted to happen, then becomes very difficult for, you know, as an adult looking in on that situation, because the first thing I thought was, why weren't they?
Was it made explicitly clear though that they could go to the police because they did have grounds for a complaint? Because this doesn't seem to be something that's up for debate. You seem to be saying this did happen.
Oh, well, look, certainly that's what I've been told, and I have no reason to question that. That is certainly what I've been told.
This is where the problem begins to arise, that there was no parental information here. The police were not brought in. You were not told. Somehow a cabinet minister begins to find this out somewhere along the way. The children involved, there's a 3-week lag after they've been sexually assaulted where they get no support from the Labour Party, who appear to be the only people who know that this has gone on. That looks like a cover-up.
So coming back to again the timeline. Look, I'm not going to say that what we did was appropriate in response, but I do want to track back. My understanding is that the organisers of the camp, after the camp, reached out to those involved a second time, because of course they talked to them at the camp about what they wanted to do, and then were at that time, I'm told, they didn't want to follow through. So went back to them. At that time, responses were received by a couple. Again, what they wanted to look at was just, and as I understand, the environment generally. And we should have followed up straight away from that. That wasn't right.
So clearly
Absolutely.
You're saying Andrew Curtin didn't handle this well. He also, people will remember the interns debacle 9 months ago, not handling that well, and still you say he keeps his job.
I want to go back to, though, the fact that Andrew, when he found out about what, he was the one that instructed them to go back and check in again with those involved. He didn't hear back. Then there was something else that triggered him to follow up again. That's when he brought in services. The party and Andrew did not organise this event. Again, no excuse. Whether the party leadership needs to come in as soon as we're aware of a problem. And he himself accepts that there was a lag. So he keeps his job? He accepts there was a lag in the way we dealt with it. Yes. But we, of course, have to do better. You know we need to do better.
Thank you very much for your time this morning. That's the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. It's 22 minutes to 8.
I haere ki nei tēnei hotaka coming up on the programme.